All right, welcome back to World of Walkers, where we talk about walkers and all things Ark of War. I'm Deranged 87. I'll be your host, and today we are talking about Elf. So I actually had a question posed to me on the World of Walkers line chat in the line community, and if you're not plugged in with the line community, add me Deranged 87 or add Melt. We'll get you plugged in. There's a World of Walkers line chat group where we talk about gear setups, different tier levels. We try to help each other kind of build. And yeah, it's a pretty strong community. So hit us up. Anyways, I had a question presented to me. What is the best gear setup for Elf? And gear is actually becoming increasingly tricky these days because of all the variables that are out there. Typically, when you go, what is the best gear setup for this commander? The question is, or the answer is, it depends. Um, but with Elf, it's a little bit different because Elf is kind of a one-trick pony. However, she is one trick before T12 and after T12. And with the advent of T12 Plus, there's actually another conversation to be had about her. So let's jump into it. Elf. Many people only know Elf as this generation's most talented oracle. In fact, she is also a famous gambler. Okay. All right. So her first skill set is Curse. Curse is going to be at 18% of units will die before their next turn. Damage dealt this way cannot exceed 200% of normal damage. Her second skill set is going to be Blessing. It's a 60% skill set as opposed to the 40% Curse. 60% triggered, and 60% of units will be recovered. It doesn't matter if she gets 0 damage, 1 damage, if her stack gets hit, doesn't matter if it's 100 damage. As long as there's one troop left in the slot, it will recover 60% of that slot before it got hit. So it's a really, really, really powerful skill. So when you're talking about Elf, you're really looking for survivability for her to be able to kind of recoup her troop stack. So before T12 and after T12. So after T12, I mean, the setup's going to be pretty easy. It's about the same as Full Metal. You're going to want to run in with a full... Oh, I don't have it saved here. All right, so you're going to want to go with your Valk. You probably run with 2 Eternal Barriers if this is T12. And we're talking about regular T12. So you're going to have your 2 EBs. You want the HP, you want the defense, you want the survivability. You want to be able to last to the end. They're going to hit you and cause no damage, but they're going to cause you to heal. And the idea is that by the time you get finished healing, or by the time you get finished getting hit, you're already healing, and eventually their stack's going to keep going down while your stacks keep going up, and you're good to go. So this is going to be kind of your T12. If you're looking, hey, what am I going to build? What do I want my elf to look like? If I'm going to put a couple $1,000s into this thing, what's she going to look like at the very end? I want her to be competitive, galactic battle, end game ready. This is it right here. That's T12. However, with the advent of T12 Plus, you may be able to trade maybe 1, maybe 2 of these Eternal Barriers for Titans. And the reason being, and you can either go Titans or, in my personal opinion, Wild Roses. And I'll tell you why. With T12 Plus having the amount of attack and its base attack increased exponentially, if you can get Curse, because Curse is going to be 18%. 18% of their unit troops will die as long as the damage doesn't exceed 200%. You have 2 limiting factors. You've got the units, which is set at 18%, but then you also have 200% of damage. Well, the problem is that there's so much defense that's built into the research that it's really hard to be able to elevate that all the way to the 18% mark. And so that's the damage limiter. The lucky part is because Elf's Curse, and we'll read it here, her Curse is a 40% skill, but Next time all enemy units attack, all enemy units attack. So this curse actually goes out onto all enemy units. It stacks. So you have 18% plus 18% plus 18%. So I mean, you got 3, 4, 5, 6 stacking curses that you can put on top of it before that enemy unit goes. It will stack all of those. The problem is that there's so much defense and such little attack on Elf that you're not really seeing replays that show the full maximum potential. If you can get her to the 9% of units being 175, that will be it'll damage dealt this way cannot exceed 200% of normal damage. Figure out how to get it to 9, then you can get it to 18. But you get it to 18, and that's going to be 200% of the normal damage. You'll end up seeing substantial losses off of Curse. So why do I say Wild Rose over Titan? Well, I really believe that if you can just put a bunch of attack gems on your Wild Roses and on your headpiece, I've got a bunch of accuracy, but with Curse you don't need accuracy, it's a guaranteed hit. Unless they're running Cassiopeia. So Elf against Walkers, you're going to see Curse become a non-issue, and we'll talk about, kind of gearing her more towards that Eternal Barrier tank build where Tear Space will do the work. But if it's T12 plus, you want to be able to rely on Curse. But if you're going against Walkers, that's not really going to be your best benefit. It's funny that Elf's weakness is maybe Walkers, but going against Air, if you gear her right, she should be able to survive and then be able to use her curse to just dwindle down their stacks. Same thing against infantry. Infantry should be a no-brainer. Elf is you can run her in a one-slot formation, and that curse will just go through and kill tons of troops if you've ever seen it work. I used to run Pictor. I try to go against Elf. I try putting 1, 2, 3, 4 slots or whatever. What happens is that her curse triggers multiple times, and it just destroys anything before the slot 6. You just don't even get a chance. And if you're going slot 4 versus an Elf, she's going to curse 1, 2, 3. By the time you get to 4, you've already been cursed. She's already triggered Blessing, and it's just hard to be able to come back from behind. So yeah, you got your Eternal Barrier build. So why am I putting Wild Roses on her? Well, Curse, and this is going to be for maybe below T12 as well. Below T12, you're going to want to put, because it has the attack at 100 on each one of these, so that's 200 attack there. You're going to want to have attack and your Wild Roses. You're going to have attack inside of your head, your Valk. You want to keep running Valk on her because Walker has so much HP, and honestly, her heal is going to be based off of the units, and you're just going to get so much more out of the Valk with Elf. I wouldn't really run anything else besides that. As you go with Fearless, kind of the same thing. Damage reduction and HP, that combination is going to be probably the perfect set. Tyrant's going to be probably this is going to be one of the only commanders that I'd probably put a Tyrant on, being that defense is going to come in handy on the Awakenings versus anything else. But I've got some defense in here. You probably want all HP on your Tyrant as well, and then you want to awaken Crit Wither. Crit Wither is going to be the standard awakening for Elf, unless you're running Crit Wither gear. You could do that by switching out a Natural Whisper, which is going to have your Crit Wither at 120%. Also, you could run Ashura instead of the Tyrant. You could also run, if you're facing air, run a Shadow. That'll really kind of help you out. Not so much, but it definitely helps in specific situations. But that Crit Wither between the Shura and the Natural Whisper, if you're running Capricorn is going to be 100% Crit Wither that's going to add on to it at every trigger. And you can reduce the enemy's crit substantially if you've got that gear set. But anyway, so that's one gear set. This gear set, specifically what I'm talking about, if you've got your curse that's going off at 18%, the way that formula works is you've got attack times attack divided by defense, and then it does divide by HP of the enemy. And so you can do really two things. You can either one, increase your attack, that'd be throwing 2 Titans on there, which is good, or you can lower the defense. And so throw some Wild Roses on there, have a bunch of attack gems. And if you're doing a bunch of attack gems, if you've got all attack gems, and you've been able to lower the defense using penetration, maybe the Dawn Hall as well, that's another 15%. So you've got 20, 20, that's 40. Another 15% would be 55. You can substantially, exponentially increase your attack and hopefully get closer to that 18% mark. And so that would be kind of how I would gear Elf before T12 and after T12. I'd probably run her either with 1 Titan and with 1 Eternal Barrier. That's going to be probably the easiest to start out with. You do a Titan and a EB. That's probably the gear set that I would have before T12. You start getting the Wild Roses. Man, play around with penetration, and this is what I was talking about. It really depends on what your opposition has. If you're below T12 and you're facing below T12, honestly, you're probably not going to need Wild Roses. Wild Roses don't really help until this meta changes from HP to defense. And it's happening. It's going to happen. It's going to happen slowly. But what happens is that as you get into the higher tiers on defense and on hyperspace with your research, it goes up to 200% on defense and then another 200% on defense through hyperspace. So that's 400% of your base defense. So that's whatever your base defense is times 4 plus your base defense, and then your attack times attack gets divided by that. Once you get to those high levels of defense, a little defense goes a long ways. Once you get to those high levels, penetration is actually going to actually be valuable. You don't see a good return on penetration until you start going against higher tier troops. And so that'd be kind of my advice with her. Yeah, so you've got your curse skill. You can either gear towards curse, which I would recommend doing if you're below T12, because honestly, she's really useless as a tank. The benefit you have above T12 is that HP right here from your Eternal Barrier, it doubles up as a weapon with tear space. 20% of that is actually going to hit and hurt the enemy. And so when you're running EBs or you're running the new Walker guns that are going to be coming out, those are going to be HP based with a little bit of RWE in them. Those actually are not bad. That's a perfect elf gear too, especially if you're running Tyrant because you already got enough defense over here. And they're kind of the anti-Vega thing where Vega ignores defense. So that's the one benefit of running either a Shadow or Shura, is that you don't have to worry about Vega ignoring the entire equipment piece. So there's some options there. But with your double Eternal Barriers, the HP is going to double up as a weapon for Elf. Before T12, you don't have tear space. And that's why you probably need to either put a Titan on there, or you need to go in and try the the Wild Roses. Give it a shot. Play around with it. The second thing that I wanted to talk about was T12 Plus. T12 Plus, when you have so much attack and attack damage, and you have a shield that's based off the attack damage, then you really need to gear her differently with T12 Plus if that's the route that you're going. You need the shield. The shield's going to help. Obviously, it's Elf. You want to absorb damage. You're already going to have the Valk, and you're already going to have Fearless. You're not going to change those. But changing out maybe the Eternal Barriers, because you're not going to benefit from tear space, for 2 Titans or 2 Wild Roses will benefit you greatly at that level, especially with the amount of attack that T12 Plus will add. Elf is a wonderful 1-slot commander. Get her up to 1.6 million and then just run a 1-slot. You'd be amazed at the amount of damage that you could cause, especially against infantry, but even against air. One of the big Vega counters is Elf. Who is she weak against? She's going to be weak against, like I said, other Walker commanders, the whole Cassiopeia gems. And that's just going to be based off the curse. But If you're facing other Walker commanders, you probably want to gear her towards her heel because she will outpace and outlast almost every commander that's out there. Um, yeah, so if you've got a commander, if you've got a gear set maybe that I've missed, if there's something that you've thought about on this video, put it in the comments below. I'd love to get some feedback. What commanders do you think, with what equipment, could beat Elf? There's some commanders out there. Obviously, Full Metal has the debuff skill that allows him to be competitive with Elf. But as a Full Metal main, I promise you, Elf is still a problem. So yeah, like, share, comment, subscribe, you name it. See you on the battlefield. Okay, and before I get out of here, before I get all the hate mail, yes, I do know that there are commanders, mainly ignore stat commanders that ignore all the defense and the HP if they combine with the right gem triggers. You're talking about Nekajiro, you're talking about Gilly, and even Vega in some situations. Rogers is still formidable against Elf, kind of 50-50 depending upon how the troop stacks end. Yeah, and so yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out before we went there. Second part of it's going to be gym sets. You want Cassiopeia no matter what. That's just going to be a given on Elf. Man, Leo, Taurus, definitely. And then it's a toss up between Virgo. There are some conversations that go Virgo could be good, Cassiopeia could be good, or Gemini being a third guaranteed hit. You're going to need guaranteed hit on her if you're going for the tear space route. If you're going for the attack route, you really want to have defense, survivability, with knowing that you're relying on that first skill curse that's going to be able to stack the attack. So it just depends again what you're facing and what gear they have, how you're going to counter. If you've got some questions, shoot me your elf on the line community. I'll take a look at it. I'll give you some advice. Let me know who your most formidable opponent is. We can figure out how to get you back in the game. So now, see you on the battlefield.